Welcome back. As we promised, we are going to shed more light on the Egyptian participation in the 78th meetings of the UN General Assembly. The United Nations General Assembly in New York extended its activities for several days with the participation of Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri, who addressed the UNGA and delivered the Egyptian speech. And also there was the Egyptian participation was also extended by other ministers with the presence of Minister of Health, Dr. Khaled Abdel Ghaffar, Minister of International Cooperation, Dr. Rania Al-Mashat. But we are going to focus mainly on the Egyptian speech, which was delivered by Egypt's top diplomat. To shed more light on this, we are very much delighted to have with us Her Excellency Ambassador Souad Shalaby, former Assistant Foreign Minister. A very good morning to you, ma'am.
Good morning.
Ambassador Shalaby, let me first, before going into the details, shed more light on the importance of this edition of the UN General Assembly. The whole world is witnessing, I think, unprecedented challenges, whether it's the climate change, it's the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, it's the economic global crisis, the food prices, the energy crisis, you name it. So how do you see the importance of this edition in specific, or this round in specific, of the UNGA?
Of course, this is a very important this 78th session is very important because it also combines many other important meetings that are taking place at the same time. So on the sidelines of this meeting, there are other meetings that are taking place, and Egypt is taking a lot of role in representing the different countries, whether it is the Islamic, the OIC, or the developing countries, or the Palestinian cause, or the of course the climate, as you mentioned, the climate, because we were presiding over the COP27, so that we are following up on the climate meetings that are taking place, and also the Minister of International Cooperation is there to follow up with the meetings that are taking place for the summit of the global sustainable goals, and the climate resilient global economy, to follow up on the Climate Ambition Summit, which is taking place also on the segment of the 2023 United Nations General Assembly. So there are many meetings that are taking place at the same time because of this important Agenda 2030. The theme of the General Assembly this year is rebuilding trust and reigniting global solidarity to accelerate the action on the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals towards peace, prosperity, progress, and sustainability for all. So you see there are 3 P's: peace, prosperity, and progress.
Yes.
And this is how this agenda is very important for this year. I mean, for
and here comes the importance of diplomacy, Ambassador Shalaby, because of the longest speeches, for example, which took place yesterday. It was of Sergei Lavrov, the Russian top diplomat, speaking about what was going on and introducing the vision of Russia regarding their military operation in Ukraine, for instance. So can I consider this round as the UNGA round of diplomacy, of accelerating the role of diplomacy, and to make sure that the top diplomats of the main countries who participated in this round are doing their best to represent the visions of their countries?
Yes, of course. Every year in September, all the countries are gathered in the United Nations in order to represent their countries, and each president or each minister of foreign affairs represent the vision of his country regarding several issues, whether it is political, economic, or social. Now, the Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sameh Shukri, delivered his speech yesterday. He stressed on the importance of the global commitment to accelerate the pace of achieving sustainable goals. Why? Because he had to represent the Egyptian priorities, how much the efforts of Egypt, that Egypt has done during all these years in order to implement and develop the agenda of Egypt, the vision of 2030. That includes the Decent Life Initiative, of course. Egypt's priorities, of course, are to attain human development and also to have focus on the health and education of the people. Of course, we also focus on the women's participation in the labor market, the participation of the private sector in the business, and also the economic and development activities in the Egyptian market in order to set the criteria to put an end to poverty in 2027.
Amen to
this
that.
is
And
what
it was said more than once, whether from the political leadership, from President Sisi and other high-ranking officials, from the Prime Minister to many ministers, according to their specialities, of course, that the Egyptian citizen is the first priority of the state. But since you mentioned one of the points which was tackled in yesterday's speech, which was delivered by our top diplomat, he also mentioned the importance of fixing or modifying the rules or restructuring the international trade organizations, because the developing countries are in a real need for appropriate funds to enable them to face the current challenges. How do you see this point, restructuring international trade organizations?
Of course, this is a very important issue that has been also tackled by our Minister of Planning, Hala
Dr. Rania
Said.
Al-Mashat.
No, also Economic Planning,
Dr.
Development
Hala
and
Said?
Economic Planning, Hala Said.
Yeah.
She also participated in localizing these social development goals. And also she has asked all the financial development banks in order to finance and prioritize the development of different countries who are in need, especially those who have suffered a lot from the global challenges that you mentioned, whether it was COVID or it was the war in Russia and Ukraine and food crisis. All these countries need financial assistance from the international development financial system or the local, the international banks, and the United Nations is the best place to request this responsibility in order to for these developing countries to be able to implement their development plans with sound financial planning to formulate a financing equation according to the set of criteria for allocating the resources that various governorates
aspects,
are
of course.
asking
And
for.
Ambassador Shalaby, also, since you mentioned COP27 and Egypt still occupying the presidency of the UN Climate Change Conference, Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri presided over the loss and damage ministerial conference to continue with the Egyptian activities regarding this issue, as also President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was in the United Arab Emirates only a few days ago, and he tackled this issue with his UAE counterpart, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. This is to go, coinciding with that. To continue with delivering all the experience we have, all the expertise, all the activities to the whole world, and particularly to the UAE, as the UAE is going to host COP28 in few months from now. Would you please elaborate on that?
Yes, of course. It was very important to follow up on what happened in COP27 and to also lead the United Emirates, who are going to host the COP28. So it was important that Shukri affirming the multilateralism and the development cooperation in order to be able to fund the different projects that were requested in COP27, whether it is in green economy or in to do the fund that was requested to be done for loss and damages that all the different countries have been suffering from, whether African or whether they are in Asia or in Latin America. So many countries have been suffering from the threat of the climate change. And in COP27, we have decided to have a special fund to meet the loss and damages. Look what happened in Libya. Look what happened in Morocco. So there has to be a fund to meet all the hurricanes, the forest fires, and to have also humanitarian aid for the displacement of the people and the spread of infections and the water security, the food insecurity, the water scarcity. So it is very important to prioritize and reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and to have a shift to renewable energy sources and to adopt the sustainable practices in
the temperature of the planet, 1.5 degrees increase, it's catastrophic. And if we do not have the luxury to waste more time, Mother Nature is angry. And so we should do our best to change this anger. Since you mentioned that, and you mentioned this, and we mentioned this important activity, to another important activity, which was the Counter-Terrorism Forum, which was co-chaired by our top diplomat along with the EU side, as fighting terrorism is a battle which does not have an end that soon. And terrorism is not a phenomenon directed to a certain people or a certain country, but it's a global phenomenon. How do you see this, and how do you see this kind of connection between security, stability, and investment and progress? Because without stability, without fighting or eliminating or getting rid of terrorism, we are not going to be able to invest or to witness any economic development. And so we are going to suffer more. How do you see this and the importance of this forum?
Yes, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry co-chaired the 13th ministerial meeting of the Global Counter-Terrorism Forum, which was also held on the sidelines of the General Assembly. And this is he stressed the importance of the international efforts to uproot terrorism and also to find innovative approaches in order to work to dry up the terror networks that are taking funds and financing, getting financing from international financial institutions while they are spreading terrorism among the citizens and the innocent citizens, and they are spreading terrorism in countries in Africa, for instance, so like Sudan, like Mali, like Burkina Faso, like Niger. All these countries have suffered a lot from worldwide terrorism, and Sameh Shukri stressed on the ways and means to prevent and to combat and to prosecute terrorist acts and to counter incitement and recruitment of different people in terrorism.
Yeah.
That means that Egypt's position is to fight terrorism and also to uproot the roots, whether it is in Africa or any other place
To
in
draw
the
its
world.
financial resources also, this is very important, and it was also tackled in the forum.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions, Ambassador Souad, so let's
Yes.
move to the important points which were mentioned in the speech of Egypt, which was delivered by our top diplomat. In all international occasions, in all arenas, Egypt is very keen to reaffirm its full support to the Palestinian people to establish their independent Palestinian state on the borders of 1967 with the eastern Al-Quds as its capital. And of course, this was one of the main points or the main messages, let's be accurate, which was delivered by our top diplomat. If you please, I want you to elaborate on that.
Yes, of course. Egypt the minister has stressed the commitment of Egypt to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinians and also to continue the efforts to reconstruct Gaza, and also to, of course, he called on the Israeli authorities to remove all political, security, and economic obstacles that weaken the Palestinian institutions and refrain from adopting unilateral policies that undermine peace support efforts, especially the settlement. They have to stop. Israel has to stop the increase in settlement, especially in the West Bank, and all these atrocities that are happening in Jerusalem and in Al-Aqsa Mosque. He has asked that all these atrocities are stopped, and we are asking for to save the two-state solution, which requires practical measures, and they have to sit together in order to resume the peace process, in
Amen
order
to that. Yes.
to secure the peace for the Palestinians. And there has to be an international donors to commit to continuing to support the Palestinian economy as well as the Palestinian people.
Sure. And regarding the Sudanese, the Libyan, the Syrian, the Yemeni files, they were also tackled in the speech of Sameh Shukri, our foreign minister. And of course, we support the permanent ceasefire between the warring sides in Sudan. We stress the importance of prevailing stability and security in Libya, in Syria, and our top diplomat also reaffirmed and stressed that Egypt is always with the political solutions, with the political settlements, far from violence, far from conflicts or struggles.
Yes, of course, Egypt has taken a step in order to reconciliate and mediate between the two factions in Sudan, because right now we are receiving more than 300,000 refugees from Sudan, on top of the 5 million who had been here in Egypt, and they are treated like Egyptian citizens. We are not having camps for the refugees. We are treating all the refugees like citizens, and we have to work hard in order to put the two factions together in order to reach ceasefire, maintain a ceasefire, and also stop the displacement, the internal displacement, because there are also internal displacement inside Sudan, which is causing a lot of trouble for the economy and for the trade and for the country to function. So
Egypt is really shouldering the responsibility of being the big sis when it comes to
exactly.
the Arab nation. And inshallah, we are going to continue occupying this position because Egypt really deserves to be all the time a positive player in the region. And it's not only the Arab states, the Arab, Mediterranean, Islamic, African, you name it, Ambassador Souad.
Yes, of course.
Also, if you permit me, I'd like to focus on the important meetings which took place on the sidelines of the 78th UN General Assembly, whether with Rashad Al-Olaimi, the Yemeni head of the head of the Yemeni Council, and also his counterparts from many countries. On top of the list, his counterparts from Greece and Cyprus, with the tripartite ministerial meeting tackling a number of issues of mutual concern. How do you see the sidelines diplomacy and the very busy schedule our top diplomat had?
Well, it is an excellent time to meet all these people because, as I told you in the beginning, every country is represented in the General Assembly, and that is the best place where you can meet and discuss different issues that are of concern to Egypt and of concern to our region and to the world. And of course, there are many, like, for instance, there is a preparatory meeting for the Summit of the Future. And this Summit of the Future is also important because Egypt constitutes a milestone in the transition from the stage of pledges to the stage of actual implementation in order to establish a fair and just international order. So Egypt plays a very, very positive and important role in the summit and also in the General Assembly in order to form a vision for the future. After all these challenges, the global challenges that has been facing the world, especially now that the continuing war in Ukraine is affecting the winter, and especially in energy, especially in food crisis. So there will be two crises coming up in winter, whether we like it or not, and that is why the Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs was focusing on these challenges that has to be addressed by all the different representatives of countries in the UN General Assembly.
And also, when it comes to the Egyptian participation in general in this important gathering, of course, it was not only about the Egyptian important speech which was delivered by our top diplomat, but with other meetings by other ministers who were there, as I said in the beginning, whether it was Dr. Rani Al-Mashat, Minister of International Cooperation, Dr. Khalid Abdel Ghaffar, Minister of Health, Dr. Hala Saeed, Minister of Planning, to tackle a number of issues regarding the economy, investment, volume of trade, energy, international cooperation in general, even culture. I mean, how do you see the importance of tackling all these files on the sidelines of the meeting and I'm going to say, having this kind of marketing for Egypt as such a country with many potentials, with many investment opportunities? How do you see this, Ambassador Souad?
Well, it was very important, of course, that all these ministers are there to address the issues that are facing Egypt, especially the economic crisis that Egypt is going through. And that is why the Minister of International Cooperation addressed this issue and requested to ensure that all the developing countries are given the quality and the quantity of financing in order to have a resilient economy. So she has strengthened the multi-stakeholder countries in order to catalyze private investment, to focus on public-private philanthropic partnership, to efficiently provide a soft financing to enhance the development financing. This is very important as a financing tool such as that swap for economic resilience. So the minister has requested the developing partners in order to help Egypt and to help other countries who are facing financial problems, to develop a global financial architecture and to structure and increase climate financing, to increase the development of funds in order to reach the global financial.
And since you mentioned developing countries, Ambassador Souad, we all the time are mentioning Africa. I mean,
Yes.
Africa is our strategic depth, and it was very clear that the Egyptian presidency of the EU in 2019 ended theoretically, but we have not at all stopped our support to our African allies, and we really want to develop the infrastructure in all African states and to give a hand in their huge let's say, national projects like Julius Nyerere Dam in Tanzania, for example, you name it. How do you see the Egyptian keenness to support the African cause in general and to support the developing countries in Africa in specific?
Well, of course, Egypt is committed to African countries, and this has also been said in the High Impact Initiative on UN Digital Public Infrastructure, where Dr. Hala Said mentioned that Egypt is also committed for the digitalization of public services in Africa, and also to commit itself to the progress and the widespread adoption of information and communication technology systems in Africa. Also, Egypt aims to increase the reliance on big data and artificial intelligence in sectors in order to improve the availability and development of these modern technologies in Africa. So, in every meeting on the agenda, Africa is
a first priority.
Priority is given the first priority, especially that Sameh Shukri and Hala Said are both involved in many projects that Egypt is pushing forward in order to be leading in Africa, whether it is in climate change, whether it is in digitalization, whether it is in development financing and climate financing. So there has been a lot of stress on the role of Egypt in Africa.
Yes,
in the next Agenda 2030, in the SDGs,
or 2063.
Sustainable Development Goals, and also the African Union Agenda to 2063,
yes,
which Egypt is playing a big role in that.
Amen to that. Well, Ambassador Souad Shalaby, thank you very much for your input and have a very good day. We were very much delighted to have with us via phone Ambassador Souad Shalaby, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Right after the short break, we are going to return back with more, so stay tuned.